Welcome to Agile Coaches Corner by Agile Thought, the podcast for practitioners and leaders seeking advice to refine the way they work and pave the path to better outcomes. Now, here's your host, coach, and Agile expert, Dan Neumann.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Agile Coaches Corner podcast. I am your host, Dan Neumann, and super excited to have you as a listener here today. Should take a moment and just appreciate the listeners that we have had, the new ones, the old ones, the ones who've maybe stopped and then come back. Very much appreciate you taking some time to listen to the podcast. Also would love to have some feedback from you. Any questions, comments? What topics would you like us to discuss? Feel free to contact me, podcast@agilethought.com, and I do see those emails and will be happy to respond to you. If you're enjoying the podcast, we also wouldn't mind you sharing it on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever your favorite spot is. Today's topic is going to be some practical tips for how managers can best support their Agile teams. We talk a lot about how Agile teams, especially the Scrum framework, advocates for self-managing teams. And sometimes that leads people to think falsely that maybe I don't need functional managers anymore. Or functional managers begin to ask, what is my role? What am I supposed to be doing to help my team? And so we've got a handful of tips here that we're going to go through and would like to know which ones resonate with you and which ones maybe you think that we've missed and you would like to have added. The first part would be to really encourage the team to get involved. One of the things that can be terribly frustrating for teams is when managers or those outside of the team are handing them solutions. They're dictating processes that need to be followed. Yes, managers, more senior folks often have good insights into how solutions can be produced, what practices have been helpful in the past, and maybe give us some warning signs. It's also really important that we trust the team and we involve them in the solutioning process. One solution may make total sense, but if it outstrips the team's capacity to deliver it, is it really such a great solution after all? Probably not. Also, you might have team members who, from their past experiences, have some solution ideas that would be entirely appropriate and potentially even better than the ones that would have been created in a vacuum by people who have a functional manager of title. So really, trust that team and engage them in the decision-making process. Research has shown that's going to lead to better trust, better work enjoyment. It also creates alignment because now we are assured that the team is bought into the process. They know what the objective is when they are part of managing how that solution is created. So really, I want to encourage managers, reach out, involve your team. Talk with them about how it feels when they get handed processes and solutions, and see what you might be able to do to engage them to come up with different ones. This is related to another tip of really being flexible and taking on more of an adaptive mindset. So what do I mean by that? As a manager, it's really important to stay informed about industry trends and be willing to pivot on those strategies based on new information. There are techniques that we might have used 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or even 2 years ago that are becoming quickly outdated. I think of some of the work that I'm doing with Microsoft Copilot now and some of the opportunities that Copilot creates with GitHub and really accelerating how our developers are able to create code of high quality more rapidly. I'll be giving a talk at the Agile Indianapolis conference in October, and what I'll be looking at there is how Copilot can be used by product owners, Scrum Masters, not to replace what they do, but to really accelerate what they do. How can we more effectively generate product backlogs? How can we take something that's in a Word document, make a PowerPoint out of it? How can we do analysis on the delivery of the team? Now, what we can't do is drive the bus off a cliff when we're trying experiments and doing an adaptive mindset. So it's important that you focus in, make your experiment what we call a safe fail experiment. If this goes wrong, Is it going to be okay? Or are we going to inappropriately put the project into significant risk? Find a way to create safety and experiment with your adaptive mindset. The third item I want to touch on is really, how do we support learning and development? Some people are very content to do a task that they're familiar with and to do it repeatedly, and that's fine. Hopefully your organization is creating a place for people to do their craft without creating what is sometimes referred to as an up or out type of approach. We also want to create opportunities for learning and development to support the team. When we take our staff members and if we were to allocate them 100% to cranking out widgets, pieces of code, test cases, executing those tests, what we lose is the opportunity for them to learn, build new skills, and really develop what Daniel Pink would refer to as mastery when he talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose as being some key drivers for workplace satisfaction, especially when it comes to knowledge work. Look for opportunities not just to take external training, but to learn from each other on the team. One of the behaviors or the characteristics of an Agile team that can help them be tremendously successful is what we call T-shaped skills. I can guarantee you that on any project, the workload won't be smooth for every specialty. What you'll find is that this week we might need a lot more front-end development. Maybe early on you need a bunch of back-end development or database work. Maybe towards the end you really need some people to lean in on user acceptance testing. You might need people to look at scalability or security. Whatever that specialty is, you can guarantee that it's not going to exactly match the staffing that you have day in and day out. When we don't have T-shaped skills, we get tremendous little delays here and there. So if I need some feedback from a team member on a Tuesday and they're not available till a Wednesday, that's another day of delay in our workflow, and value delivery slows down. Now imagine if somebody else on the team was available who could give me that feedback on a Tuesday. Now we've improved the value flow. So the learning and development isn't just about that feel-good career development, which is super important. It's also about accelerating the flow of value and reducing bottlenecks through the system.
Have a topic you want us to tackle? Send an email to podcast@agilethought.com or tweet it with the hashtag AgileThoughtPodcast.
So that brings me to the fourth point that I wanted to touch on, which is, as a leader, you should be looking at the system that people are operating in. Where are people needing to do handoffs? Where do people experience delays? And where in that value stream is the flow of value slowing down? I can think of examples where environments need to be set up. I can think of examples where we need approval from somebody or code check-ins to be approved, pull requests, all those activities that can create wait and handoff, again, slow the value. So then the question becomes, how much is it worth to change the environment, maybe adding capacity so the value flows quicker? That's where we want to start looking at things like work time versus wait time. And this can be a little tricky to try to calculate, but you can use some rules of thumb. You can look at how work flows through your application lifecycle management tool, Azure DevOps, Jira. Look for that time where we're working, where we're waiting. How long on average does it take from the time we start an item until we're done? That would be the cycle time. How long does it take from the time we request something or we receive a request from our stakeholders until we are able to deliver it? That would be the lead time. And then as you start to experiment, which we were talking about with the adaptive mindset and creating safe fail experiments, now you can see if the work item time is improving. Are we getting work flowing through more quickly? It's possible you make a change and it slows down the value delivery. That's a chance to stop and back up and think, what else might we do? So as a leader, you're getting your team involved in the solution. You're taking on an adaptive mindset, one of experimentation. You're learning. and then you're looking at how to measure and manage that flow through the system. Some of these practices are easy to do at the team level, and then when you start to scale up, it can start feeling fractured and very challenging to keep everybody aligned. So now if you're a leader and you need multiple teams to collaborate for your outcome, look for ways to create those networks of teams really centered around customers or products. One of the things I don't like about some of the scaling frameworks out there is some of them try to centralize the points of contact between teams. And really what I've seen be far more effective than saying, gosh, this manager is going to be the liaison between this team and that one, is to really build networks of people that communicate across the team boundaries. Hopefully your front-end specialist on one team is engaging with a front-end specialist on another team, or potentially a back-end specialist on a different team, because the front end needs to consume the back. So yes, we want teams that can deliver vertical slices of functionality independently, but at some point you outgrow the ability for one team to be appropriate, and you need to have multiple teams. So have networks of relationships instead of point-to-point connections, because when you have a funnel, you create a bottleneck. It becomes impossible for one person to liaise between all the different teams. And so what we want to do is have networks of relationships, and you want to push the decision-making out and down in that system. Get clear on what types of decisions can be made within the team, and then only when necessary, decisions need to go up the ladder or potentially up a couple layers of that ladder. We want to have responsible, decentralized control. So think of the benefits of having decision-making pushed down. You've got people who can decide quickly, they can reach out to people they might need to engage with, and they're making safe choices. The risk you run, though, is that now that decision-making is pushed down, if we aren't aligned on the vision and the goals of the overall project, you end up with a chaotic mess. That's where I feel like some of the activities that happen at the start of the project in a phase that I like to call inception are really key. That's where you're building alignment on what the objective of the project is, how you're going to measure success, what's in scope, what's out of scope at a high level. And then within those boundaries, team members can make smart choices about how they best deliver on those outcomes. The sixth and the last thing I want to touch on in this rather brief podcast episode is let's celebrate the successes and learn from the challenges. Just because somebody does something and you don't get the expected positive results, okay, it's not a problem. Let's learn from that, because we should be getting feedback rapidly and doing safe fail experiments. And when we get those successes, we need to celebrate the person, the people, the mindset that led that person to take a chance and get a success. I can't think of how many times I've been on projects where we only get frustrated when things are late. We don't really celebrate when things are on time, when they're early, when they're high quality, when somebody stepped outside their comfort zone to go try something different. So celebrating those successes goes a tremendously long way in terms of building excitement and enthusiasm within your teams and building a positive team structure. So 6 quick tips there for managers who are working with their Agile teams. Encourage your team, foster that adaptive mindset, make sure you've got time for learning and improving the workflow. You want to align on the vision, the goals, drive that decision-making down in the organization, and then celebrate the successes that you get. I would love to hear from you. Have you done some of these things? Have they worked out? Have you seen positive or negative results? Reach out to me, podcast@agilethought.com, and I would love to hear your experiences and your tips, and we could share them in a future episode. Thank you very much, and until next time, thanks for listening to the Agile Coaches Corner.
This has been the Agile Coaches Corner podcast, brought to you by Agile Thought. The views, opinions, and information expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and the guests, and do not necessarily represent those of Agile Thought. Get the show notes and other helpful tips from this episode and other episodes at agilethought.com/podcast.